So you are currently being recorded. Don't mess up.
Great, thanks for that.
No pressure.
All right, let's get started. Hi, I'm Andrew. You might have seen my posts in Showoff regarding the game that I'm working on called Valentine. And so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about probably the most interesting thing I've done so far, because there hasn't been a lot, but I'm going to talk about. Oh, sorry, Justin. Uh, hmm. I cannot screen share. I would appreciate if I could, so I can show you guys some stuff. There we go. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hit enter. My bad.
All right. So I'm going to be talking about uh, the way that I've set up my sprites in my game to sort of facilitate the 2D, 3D hybrid visuals that I've got going on. Little tongue-in-cheek, if any of you have seen Octopath Traveler, that game uses a similar technique and was a big inspiration. So what is 2D, 3D? Just really quick before I show you some of my stuff. It's the idea of using 2D sprites in a three-dimensional environment and sometimes extending that design philosophy to the environment itself of making it sort of appear like this 2D, 3D hybrid. It's not a new technique. Paper Mario is one of the first games that comes to my mind that used it. That you have Mario and the Toads and all his companions as these 2D sprites walking around, and the background kind of looks like it's out of a pop-up book that it could exist in 2D, but here you are walking around in this 3D environment. That screenshot on the bottom there is from a game in development called Ethra, which is a newer application of the technique, but it's the same idea that you take your models and your environments and you texture them in a way that is feasible to exist in 2D, but it looks like you've just pulled them out of that two-dimensional setting. A quick clarification, Yooka-Laylee there on the right, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, great platformer. Um, from what I understand, that style is mostly called 2.5D, where you take all of your 3D stuff, all the characters are actual 3D models, all of the backgrounds are 3D models, but it's a 2D platformer. So that style, similar naming convention, but different in the sense that it's all 3D, but you're only moving on a 2D plane as opposed to having 2D stuff moving on a 3D plane. Like I said, Square Enix has been a big inspiration with their HD 2D style of just taking these absolutely gorgeous Final Fantasy style sprites and textures and transplanting them into a three-dimensional environment. That having these beautiful modern effects like the fire or the water in these screenshots, combined with the beautiful sprite work from older days. So some of the basics of what I'm doing. I'm working in Unity, and this slide was basically my learning curve in the sense that having a character exist in 3D is not equivalent to having that same character cast a shadow and feel grounded in 3 dimensions. And having that character exist in 3 dimensions is not equivalent to having your environments exist in the same way. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of what I'm doing in Unity and Blender, and just talk a little bit about how I achieved the effects in my game. Let's see. All right, here we are in Unity, and where is so here these cardinals use the same technique, so we'll focus on them. So just having the cardinals exist in this space, right? Uh, Easiest solution imaginable. Uh, Go into their sprite sheet uh, and just pull them out into this space. Why don't I do that now? Right. And, I haven't split the sprite sheet up in this instance, but it's the same effect that the easiest thing to do is just pull this out here and bam, it exists in 3D space. You can kind of move it around. But it's not casting a shadow like these guys are, which was really important to me when I was making this for them to have those shadows because it sort of grounds them in the environment. and makes it all feel a little more realistic, a little more dramatic. And you could go on and animate the whole game like this if you want. It's possible to make these move in 3D, just the same as any other model, but they don't have that grounded sense about them. So instead, what I did, and using tutorials online that I followed that were extremely helpful. If anyone wants a link to those after the presentation or wants to talk to me more about the specifics of the implementation, just let me know. But what I did was use a shader graph or use a shader. And this is a lot of spaghetti if you've never seen a shader. So don't sweat it. I'm just going to go through it all step by step. This is what I use on all of my character assets and a couple other assets that I'll show you once I'm done with this. So the main components of this are that I have a texture, I have a size for my sprite sheet, and I have the row and column that I'm on in my sprite sheet. So all of this block here is just setting up a way for the shader graph to divide this sprite sheet into equally sized components so that it can display one sprite at a time. The preview looks a little funny here, but then I feed the texture in this, and from there, like I said, the tutorials that I've gone through explain a little bit about these different connections. Just of note, the ones that I have here, the base color connects into this shader to display the colors, and the alpha values display to shave off any excess that might exist in this texture that's like supposed to be clear space in the image. And that's what produces this effect. And from that, you can animate the character, you can animate whatever it is that you have the shader graph on. Just for instance, Emily here uses that same technique. You can see she's casting the same shadow and being animated in the same way. And you can switch between those different animations. Unity has a built-in animator for 2D sprites, which is, good if you like that. And it is possible to use this technique in combination with that animator. But I'm really not a fan of all the spaghetti that it uses. So I was happy to implement this technique in such a way that all of my animation is done with an animator class that manually iterates the frames rather than having the Unity animator do that for me and having to link up all of the different nodes in a sort of spaghetti mess. So that's how the cardinals are done. That's how Emily's done. That's what the chest is done as well, because again, it's just this 2D plane. And the one thing that all of these have in common is that they all have their own animation sets that I have to play. The cardinals fly away, the chest opens. Emily does a lot of different stuff. But the statue and the gates here, despite having a lot of similarities to these three, are actually done differently. So I made these assets in Blender, and it's really just a matter of making these textures in whatever pixel editor you want and applying them to your geometries and sort of modeling in a more traditional way. Because without the need to animate these, I don't need to go through the process of having an additional shader graph, an additional texture to put on them. Instead I can assemble more complicated geometry in Blender if I need to, like with the statue, or even with the gates. I can just create the asset and drop it in rather than having to configure a whole sprite sheet, which at some point it's a matter of preference, but I prefer being able to work in a more free environment for these assets that I know I'm not going to have to animate. And together, all of those form the basis of my game, all of those different techniques. I haven't gotten to environments yet. I would love to come back in 6 months' time when I have and sort of do a follow-up to this presentation on how those work in a 2D, 3D environment. But that's the basics. That's what I'm here to present on. So thanks for giving me the floor. And if you have any questions, let me know, or we can move on to whoever's presenting next. Oh, there. I think I caught a question in the chat. Cheers. So the shadow shader to the whole side. Oh yeah, yep. So just that question from earlier, Alex, that I modeled the statue and the gate are modeled in Blender, and I don't actually have to apply the shader to them because they're imported models.
Cool. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate that. That was a great display.
Sure
Always
thing. Happy.
interesting to see everything that I've seen in Showoff actually put together because it's sometimes hard. Just like I look at your posts and I'm like, wow, that looks really technically complicated. And I also have no idea how that goes into the game. So it doesn't seem like Thad or Terry are here yet. Alex or William, do you have anything you want to show? I know you guys have projects on the side, if you're comfortable with it. If not, I can talk nonsense for like 30 minutes and be stupid that way.
I think we could talk about Codename Prototype for a short while.
Sure. William, I think you have a lot more to talk about than I do. I've been doing a lot more design
I
work.
think you can talk about the design work though. It would
Okay.
also be pretty cool.
I could like uh go freestyle. Just like show it off.
hmm
Alrighty. Let me contact that for a second. Hold up. So I do want to see uh the Seraph, the new Seraph model. So big pog. Let me I have a lot of stuff on my screen. Let me go clear it off. And open Unity. So have you guys actually heard of Codename Prototype at all? Like I put it we put it in game development, but it's gotten limited reception. So I'm just curious if you guys know it or if it needs introductions.
I would just say take it from the top, honestly.
Alrighty. Oh, you're crazy optimization design. Well, oh, that's oh gosh, my lighting is really poor right now, so just forgive me. Uh, so yeah, I'm Alex. This is my amazing programmer William. I've just been doing design work for our game called Codename Prototype. Uh, the backstory goes a long time ago, I designed it as a board game. William was just like, okay, I'm just gonna program it, and he
Yeah.
did. It's a multiplayer kind of like board game style sort of game, and essentially, um, the best way to describe it's a top-down uh, turn-based tactics game. So you control 4 units, and you're fighting the opponent's 4 units, and you're trying to it's a prediction-based game. So you're trying to pay attention to what the enemy is doing and kind of focus on like make sure you progress your own. And it was like heavily inspired by MOBA style elements. And we're trying. There's a lot to work on design wise, in terms of abilities and effects, and just like try to make sure it all feels natural. So right now my Unity is loading very slowly.
I could share
Uh,
my screen
sure,
for
sure,
a
sure.
moment.
Okay.
So this is how the game looks. Once I press play, it will look more complete. So we have 4 units, and here are the opposing 4 units, and both teams have goals that they're all trying to complete. And in a multiplayer scenario, you can't see the opponent's goals, so you're kind of just like in the dark as to what they're trying to do until they start attacking a unit like 2, 3 times. Because like some of these goals are like attack C, and if you see someone attacking like C 2 times, you can predict that they might attack C again in the next turn, and then you want to dodge. So
Exactly.
yeah, and you can keep
And
going, Alex.
yeah, yeah. And as you can see, the goals, originally the goals were both consecutive and non-consecutive. So the little check mark next to consecutive. Cool, cool. Yes, we have a cool description because for all the stuff that we we made, and it's just like the basic scriptable object sort of thing we set up.
Yeah.
So if you want to actually show those like how the abilities are done there, which is cool. So you have the icon, which is just a sprite, a display name, which it's a scriptable object, so the data is just used. A priority is when the attack, like when the attack goes off, because attacks, both players act on the same turn. So there's multiple turns, and both players act on the same turn. So one ability goes off first, and the next ability goes off, which is important for healing and such. So where the enemy attacks you, you go down to like 0 health, and then you get healed back to full. Right now, it's all the stats. As you can see, there's only 2 stats in the game. It's only attack and health. And originally this was because of the board game restriction at the start. Just I kept it as simple as possible just to see if I can mess with something, turn like kind of prediction based. So right now this knight's gonna attack this other knight. We gotta have unofficial names. Right now they're just class A, B, and C for goal purposes. And you could attack with the knight, and then the knight can also dodge out of the way, and then instead have someone else take damage. So you're gonna see the dash goes off first, so the units move, and then the damage goes off. Let's see. Yeah.
So because A dodged, B got the attack.
Yes, and this is important for goals because right now, they're all consecutive. So if you miss your attack, the goal sort of stops
kind of resets.
Yeah, it resets, exactly. It resets. And so this essentially when the goals are consecutive, it gets very hard in practice. Interestingly enough, William set up auto builds and such. So like if you go on itch.io, we have it restricted. If you actually wanted to try it, we could.
Yeah,
but
so like
yeah. I think right now, I think we now have a couple things. So, in terms of okay, I just open my Unity. Sweet. So, cool things that exist. I've just been like Williams kind of sort of set up this effect sort of class interface for me to use where I don't have to touch anything in the back end. I could just make a new effect and it works.
Yeah, so like he just adds a new effect, it gets networked and everything just kind of works.
Yeah, it's very cool. A voice crack. We opening it right now. I kind of show you how that looks like for me. It's very
Alex,
cool.
you want to screen share?
Yes, I'm gonna screen share.
Okay, I'm gonna stop screen sharing then.
Sounds good. Cool. So I'm using Rider, and I have 2 effects on the side. Like this is a bit confusing. Let me just kind of close a couple things. And I'll show you how this sort of the stages look like. Close. So this is actually a long time ago. We ended up working on a normal turn-based tactics game with kind of XCOM style. So if you scroll up to the top and you close this codename core, you'll see the other projects in the same thing, which is pretty cool. So the thing is, Willie was really great at making these systems that you could keep reusing. And like that has been like really helpful, at least in terms of designing the But anyway, so right now we have a couple stages of abilities, and it's been really flexible so far. And I think it's worth covering. So as you can see in the game, you have this is entry, so this is like a kind of the hub you start at, and then you can kind of join a game here. But in terms of scenes, we have offline and then battle offline is the one. And also replay is really cool. Where at the end of the game, you could copy this state at any time in a JSON format. It'll completely be able to replay it. So as you can see here, have this. You have, I think, game context is the main one. Interesting thing of I didn't know this before. Do you in terms of game context? No, was it game context? I want to show the default game state here, game context. So this game context uses a reference to just a file, a JSON file, and so you could just have a file and then have you could manually kind of put in the sort of format that you want. So in this case, it was JSON, and it was able to parse that in the script, which is very cool. Do you mind if I show that? Or
Sure.
sure.
You can pretty
So
much show anything you want. Don't
cool,
mind.
cool. So it's just a text asset, right? And then I think use the built-in deserialize
I use JSON.NET, which isn't
JSON.NET.
the
Okay.
same as. So Unity has a built-in JSON utility class, which kind of is a less powerful version of like JSON.NET. So it converts an object into JSON, which is like the format you see on the right. And JSON lets you like save it as a file, send it over the internet, and kind of use it as like text data.
Exactly. And that was super cool. So you have all this JSON data, and what you end up doing is that you could have I think we have a game resources scriptable object, which associates every single piece of the JSON with an object or some sort of scriptable object we have.
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't realize but you could do before. I just think it's a cool trick, which is why I want to say it. So you could have this character knight, and it gets this reference to the character knight.
Yeah,
There
so
you
it
go.
just looks up from the dictionary based on the string that's in the text file.
Yep. And I guess you could change out resources and stuff if you wanted to have
Yeah.
different
So
skins.
like, yeah, I'm like thinking about like modding as well, like how Minecraft you can like replace the furnace with a modded furnace. So you just in this case you just remove the entry from this dictionary and just add in your own version. And because everything is like done by strings, everything will just get automatically replaced.
And it's freaking sick. In terms of abilities, let me open it up. I think I'm battle offline right now. Cool. So I'm messing with my zoom little bar at the top. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah,
Um,
I was doing that as well.
I see. So as you can see here, the general workflow process for me to make abilities. So each one of these weapons is an ability right now. Um, so I go to abilities. So I think this knight is using cripple ability. We're going with cripple because I'm using a lot of the sort of terms that I'm used to in games. Cripples from Divinity, Ritual Sin. That's the one I'm familiar with. Um, so in terms of this, we have cripple and then we have the effects here. So these are just alternative scriptable objects. So if I wanted to, I could change this. Right now, it was a half damage effect. I think I accidentally changed the icon because that was a push pull error.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
yeah, but right now, if I wanted to, I could just change this effect out for like let's do Divine Shield. Um, and right now it didn't change it to Divine Shield, which is pretty cool. And then since the Divine Shield is just an effect, what's it called? When the tooltip's displayed, it uses this description here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is super cool. It's a very dynamic. And that makes me generally excited. Just being able to switch things out on the fly. Um, so generally I would make a new ability, and each ability has a sort of direction you could use, I think. So we have targeting, which is interesting. It uses bit flags uh, for I think it's many to one relationship, is that sort of thing. Just a quick
Yeah, you
scroll
can
if you
have
want to
like many
try to do that.
you can have like many target directions and like just choose a combination of them. And you can see how it looks in the inspector there.
Yes.
So if you want a skill that targets forward and to the side, you can just select side and forward.
So exactly. So when you do side, it has this bit here and it gets activated and shifted. So when you put it here, it can detect whether you actually add side or not. And I think in terms of abilities, I can kind of show what that looks like. So there's one sort of ability. I think did you made descriptable object, CRI descriptable objects class, I believe. So, oh yeah,
Yeah, I
we're
don't
using
know if it's required, but like this is Odin Inspector, but not too important
yes.
here.
Yes, we're using Odin Inspector. That's kind of important though, I think, for certain things. Let's see. So yeah, you could get possible targets and apply. I think this whole like kind of uh, system here of applying and kind of like this event blasting is really useful. So in terms of for ability effects, so these abilities are kind of constant. I just make a new ability, but each effect is currently a different um, class. And let's see, let me go to counter effect
So
right
I
here.
think it might be good to like introduce the relationship between like these kind of abilities and effects. So
Sure.
abilities are like the weapons that you see in game, and each ability slash weapon has ability effects. So that's what you see here. Gale technically crippled because the name is here is wrong, but Gale has half damage and divine shield right now. Well, I guess this is a better example. So place caltrops has damage and Gale ability effects. These can apply status effects or terrain effects depending on what the ability effect does. So there's like a kind of a tree here. So ability applies
Are you sharing your
ability
screen?
effects.
Oh,
I'm just looking at your screen.
oh, okay, okay.
So abilities apply ability effects, which apply status or terrain effects, or like other effects on the board. So like taking
Yes.
damage is also an effect.
Yes, yes, yes. So these little things you see at the top are status effects, and I wanted to test out this new health system, so I just made it a status effect that's applied onto units.
Hmm.
Um, I think terrain effects, I could kind of show what that looks like as well. It just gets applied to the tile instead, from what I remember. But yeah, in terms that uh, gameplay abilities, the logic is actually completely separated from the actual like data in gameplay, which I think is really interesting to note. Uh, so let me kind of show what this looks like. So I have effects. I think a caltrop source is what I would use right now. So now the knight kind of places this. I mean, this probably is going to look weird because the field effects are already on there too. Although, so here you go. Just do that, do that. So this death mark here is actually a status effect, and this caltrops here is a terrain effect. So this is applied to terrain. This is currently applied to the unit. We're displaying it on just the tile right now. Can be changed.
Yeah, it's kind of placeholder, but because like we don't, it's hard to tell what's a terrain effect and what's a status effect because they show up in the same spot. So like caltrops, as you can see, is a terrain effect, but Deathmark, the crosshair, is a status effect, and it's hard to tell if you're not like familiar with the game which is which. And Alex has showed us like the difference. So terrain effects are applied on the tile. So when the unit moves, it doesn't move with a unit, but status effects move with a unit. So that's why you see the crosshair move down while the caltrops don't.
Exactly. Let me see. Is already is Terry? Did Terry join? Nope. Not yet. Cool. Keep an eye out for me, Robert. Please. Cool. So in terms of counter effect, this is kind of what it looks like. Right now, there's a counter status effect that it applies. Um, something interesting about I'm just gonna cover this first, and I'll go into a bit more of each piece. So we have a game state tracker, which William has been kind of working on a bit.
That's been my focus for the last week.
Yes, and it's this kind of sort of abstract tracker, which just allows me to do a couple of things. So when I'm designing, I just do tracker dot. So I have a couple of things I could choose from, either from state, from the event tree, which is what William's working on, or the original state. So I believe in trackers is not um something's recreated each turn. I believe the tracker is recreated each turn, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The trackers are recreated each turn. So at the start of the turn, it's the original state. And then when the turn gets updated, it goes to the new state. Um, so you could do tracker.state. There's two boards, so I could use one of the boards. And I could either do it of the user board or the target board. Target board. So this is the player ID of the actual player, not the unit. Let's state that I could do. There's a couple other pieces of data you could use, like turn counter, and essentially whatever we have this sort of ability effect abstract class in which all the ability effects have this apply function, and the apply has this tracker, which is kind of the state of the game. You pass in the state of the game, pretty much. You pass in the user and you pass in the target. And with that kind of information, you could do a lot of different things. So in this case, whenever tracker or whenever this counter is being used, I look for all tiles. I remove any statuses, any counter status that already existed on that team. And then I create a new status effect, and then I have that status effect be applied to the target. So I think this is also interesting because I never really thought of effects and abilities as flyweights, is it? Should be.
Yeah, it's kind of a interesting system.
Yeah, it's honestly really cool. It's more to have these assets sort of thing. So like counter status effect is an asset, and then you make an instance of that asset here, which is kind of generalized. It takes in a reference to that
So I
asset.
can explain this in
Of
a
course.
brief fashion. So with kind of scriptable objects, one of the common problems in Unity is that you want to modify the scriptable object per usage. So like if you have a iron sword in your game, you want to upgrade that iron sword for one player, but you can't exactly do that because that one iron sword scriptable object is shared between all players. So if you upgrade one of the iron swords, now everyone has that upgraded iron sword. So what you want to do is that you want to split out read-only data and writable data. So in this case, we have the scriptable object asset, which is the status effect. And then we have the status effect instance, which is the writable data. So status effect has read-only data, instance has writable and readable data. And this allows us to have data that's shared globally and data that's also constrained to one instance of the status effect. So modifying one of the status effects won't modify it for everyone, just only that one place you want it to be modified. And that overall is the main point of the system, but it also helps with networking because you can send less data. You don't have to send the whole asset. You just send the data that might be changed. So it's also like a kind of optimization in a sense.
There's a lot of very cool optimization here, and I think this flyweight, I've never seen this before, and it went in the same way. So I'm thank you for talking about it, William. They keep kind of showing me this stuff. There's gonna be a lot of different things. I just think it's I want to share it. It's cool. And is in terms of this game state tracker, kind of continuing on, we have this unit status applied event. We kind of have these events here, in which I've been creating a lot of different events. That's sort of branch off this game event here.
Yeah.
And this game event is applied from the tracker. The tracker does a lot of the apply.
Yeah, the tracker does most of the heavy lifting, and game events are just subject to a few rules that you have to follow in order for the tracker to work properly. So game events can't have random, you can't generate a random number in them because that makes it hard to replay. Because part of my design for the game is to be able to have replays, and if you have randomness in your data, you can't really replay it properly because every single time the game is replayed, you get different results from that random number generator.
And I had a similar issue with the way it was being replayed, because there's two different sorts of I guess states. I guess there's you can replay the same thing and get different results if you have random numbers within it.
Yeah.
Within these events. And in that sense, whenever I use these effects, I always use the tracker to get the current tile or to get the current unit because those could be
Yeah, references
sort
get kind of broken. It's
yeah,
just kind of
references
a restriction.
exactly, exactly. Um, and that kind of caught me a lot of times, so I didn't just use the thing at the position. Or I didn't. You can't really pass in the unit. We just pass in the position, which is just data, you instead of a reference. So that's interesting thing to think about, where it's like if you give the state and you give all this data about the state, then you can get anything you want from that state.
Hmm. Yeah, basically what you're working on here is just a blob of data, and you can transform that data however you want. So this is kind of going into like data-oriented design stuff, where you have data and you just have a transform that modifies that data. And it's also kind of like pure like functional programming, where you have like same input equals same output. And that's a principle pretty important to this game, because you want the game to be deterministic. You don't want randomness that appears somewhere in the middle of your function, because if you think about it, random numbers are kind of input to your system as well. And if you don't control that input, you don't control the output as well. So if you can keep all the inputs the same, and you can keep all the if you keep all the inputs the same, you can then keep all the outputs the same.
Exactly. Just like it does borrow a lot from sort of functional programming, which is very cool. Um, and some things that I found were really cool in terms of game events. Kind of right now they actually do the actions, so as you see ability used, it calls a supply method. It's sort of this whole. I imagine it like the whole, like a main like I imagine it to have sort of one main file, one main sort of when you have a file with a main in it and it gets ran, like
Hmm.
in that main, eventually all these applies are ran, but everything above sort of runs the apply of the thing below. Or and a lot of functions of the
Yeah,
thing
there's
below.
like a recursive apply here.
Yes. And that was pretty interesting to see where there's only like really one source of truth though. It's just war recursive reply. It's not like these events being called everywhere. Um, I think it's in game context, isn't it? Uh, it's okay.
I'm not sure what you're looking for, but like game context or game state solver, I think.
Game state solver might be it.
That's I don't remember if it's state or not. I think it's in the state folder.
State. Here you go. Game state solver, which just has a serializer. Let's see.
And bit down.
Yes, exactly. Where's event, which has everything being updated. Look, oh, this is slightly different than whatever. It's
Oh
okay.
yeah, I changed that.
It's okay. This game has been a whole iterative process, mostly on William's end, and I'm just kind of working with the design space. Like I'm very much working as a designer, which is cool. So
Yeah, the interesting part of this is I've been trying to keep our two domains separate. So like I work on the back end, and Alex works on like a design part of it. And I've been trying to keep his code the same while modifying everything on my side. And we have kind of like a two folders. So like I have the state folder, and Alex has the, I think, gameplay or logic
I
folder.
have
Yeah, he has a
logic.
logic folder.
Yes.
These folder names are outdated, because like these were kind of like the game has changed a lot over the last 3 months since I started this in like December. So some stuff is outdated, but like overall, logic is Alex's folder, state is my folder.
Exactly. And it's this whole sort of um, chain.
And you
Okay,
can show
so
them
it's
the
like
log of the event tree, because like I find that pretty cool.
okay, I could. That's within. That's after you play, right?
Yeah, you just play and do something, and you just look in the console.
Yes. I could look at the console. So a couple
You
things.
might want to like apply it the other way, other
Apply
one.
the other way.
Like just confirm both sides.
Yeah, of course. There you go. There you go. So replay event tree here.
Hmm.
This is what William's been working on for a long, long time.
the past week, which
Past
isn't
week.
that long, but like
It's long enough. It's
Yeah.
a big system. So it's you kind of have all these events going off, which I believe I'm pretty sure these are just the names of the actual classes, right?
Yeah, these are just the
Okay.
names. So if you like look in Writer right now, you can
Yes.
actually see like a one-to-one representation here. So you see how it's like I'll just game say solver, like
Game
the
state solver.
current file you're on.
Of course.
So you see how it's like result raise event turn started event. If you go back to Unity, you can see that exact event in Unity.
There you go. You're right. I actually don't know what this looks like. Shall we dive in?
Sure.
Okay,
It's like pretty simple though.
cool. Perfect. It just has its own apply. See, this game is just entirely applies. You just apply onto a state. So here you go. So chart started event.
Yeah, so
This actually
different
does.
events can apply additional events. That's why you see like a tree in the in Unity console. So for example, currently turn start event doesn't trigger anything else but change the turn counter. But in the future, if you want to like run something at the start of the event, you can listen to that event and then apply a event as a child of that event. And if you go back to Unity, Alex, you can see how like different systems react. So
Yeah.
evaluating player commands that basically applies
I just
both sides, both of the commands of the players.
and yeah, each one has an ability. So ability is used. This it does damage. So ability damaged event, unit damaged event. And with all this, something interesting to know is that, as you can see here, you don't really directly modify the state. At least for me, in the effects, in my
It's
ability
actually
effects,
legal
I
now
tend
though.
not to.
I actually made it legal.
Cool.
So that's not a restriction anymore.
Awesome. Uh, Generally, at least from what I like in terms of like lessons that I'm like thinking about, generally I had like you use these events to modify the state in a way, so you could
Yeah.
keep track of everything that's happening.
And it's a bit more flexible because in the future, events can be canceled or like intercepted. So if you don't want a unit to die, you just intercept the unit died event
It's like, yeah,
and replace it with like a heal. That way the unit lives.
right. So it's this composition of objects in a way, and then you could just remove the object, right?
Hmm
Uh, Reminds me a bit of command pattern in a way.
it is actually the command pattern. I
Yeah,
combined like the command pattern and the event pattern,
that's cool. And so
and
you
it
get
kind of
this.
just does that.
Yes, and at the very where was the how the state hold up. Boards? Is it this? Uh,
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for um I can I feel really silly. Um, in terms of looking at the state. Let's see. It should just be this where I copy pasted it to the JSON editor. Just to see what that kind of looks like. Let me go on to private tab. I don't know. Is this getting bored? Maybe. Editor. So is JSON
Editor online,
editor
and
online, right?
it's the suggestions
Perfect.
below.
Yes, perfect. So we've been using this a lot. Um, it's okay. In terms of this shouldn't really matter, right?
Yeah, it's open in document, I think, and just
Okay.
paste it.
This is like, oops. There you go. Prepare manually.
Oh, there's a
Oh,
bit of stuff on the bottom. I think
right.
copied.
Here you go. So you can just get rid of this. But as you see, you could just kind of print it out. You could print out the JSON into the console, and then you could just read it. You could just read what happened, which was actually really cool because you could take the previous state of the last turn and compare it against the state of the next turn and see what changed and see what
Mhm.
kind of went wrong, which actually we had to do
Yeah.
because of some
So
of the
like
things.
the cool thing about this is that you can essentially get like you can diff the two different states. So you can have the state of the last turn and the state of this turn. So when if you like press the compare button and have something on the
Uh,
left side,
you saw behind the scenes of me just writing down the announcements. It's okay. Let me see if I get that. Is it this? It's this. Open.
I think the left button maybe.
Go. So I'm gonna do this. Format.
And then compare. And go to tree on both sides.
Yes, of course. In this case, like health current, lost health.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought
And
this was so cool.
yeah, this is like the representation of the entire game. So everything that's in the game is here.
Exactly. So lots of cool different. You can see all the different changes in the state, and um, and that's a lot of that. Just the general thing. You have abilities. You have ability effects, and then those ability effects apply status effects, and those status effects can have data in them, which is interesting to think about. So we have this counter status effect at like sort of class, and then we create a scriptable object representing that status. So I could have like a stronger counter status effect than another, like one that has longer turn duration or not, right? I can kind of show what that looks like. Just in terms of if you're gonna replicate abilities, this has been pretty interesting to work with. Pretty flexible. And it's still kind of iterating on it. But status effects, as you can see, I have this counter status effect, and this has its own reference to turn duration. So right now it's 2, and I could change. I can make another one that's 3 or something, right? Change it to 3, and they're completely different assets here.
And these are kind of the default, not the actual values in game. So once you instantiate these in game, you have an active turn duration, which is like how long the counter status effect will last until it disappears. And that's done through like the instance data. So we go back to like the separation of read-only data and editable data. So the duration, you want to keep that separate for every single status effect. So you keep it on the data, the instance data.
Yes, and that's when you create the status effect itself, right? And this is what it looks like here. So we have this counter status effect class, and we make the asset from the class here, and then every single the asset has a piece of data defined, and every single instance has a different version of this data, this piece of data, in which we take the actual duration, as William just said.
And you can show that off in the JSON because you can see how the data is objects different.
Let's see.
So that's a goal, which is kind of similar.
Yes, the goals are done a similar way. Status effect here, status effect Gale. I don't know if Gale has anything right now on it. Actually, because I have to go back and like add a lot more variables to these things. But I was really just trying to make things work. Just kind of see how it works. So you have this. You have turned into recovery,
Yeah,
which
you
is
have the
status
data
effect
health
passive
bar
health bar.
size.
Yeah, health bar size exactly. So this is instance data. So if I wanted to, I could have one unit have a larger health bar than another. But it's the same. It starts at the same size, which is cool. And in terms of this, something that I found interesting as well is that with the status effects, when I think the effects are being applied, you have all these different like useful, like design-wise, this has been extremely useful. Where you can have public override, and you have a on update. Actually, that's just.
I did remove that in the latest version, by the way, on
I
update.
think that's
But
true.
you can do on event occurring, and that's equivalent.
On event.
Do you have it
That's not right.
overridden? Like
I might do. It's been a little bit. I think I gotta check everything out.
yeah, you might want to merge from main, honestly.
Yeah, because I'm on a branch right now.
Mhm.
So I was just trying to fix something. Let's see, yeah, code annotation is cool. Let me check that out. Freaking.
Does anyone have any questions, by the way?
Yes, that's not what I wanted to do. Here we go, code. That's what I wanted. Has this been interesting at all? I found this mind blowing. So here, yeah, on event occurring. Because I'm pretty sure I have them already all sort of done here. So Yeah, this reminds me of like, hello. Absolutely, how modular. Yeah, that's exactly what blew my mind as well. It's just like this. It's all these little pieces that work together, and it's not even like spaghetti because you kind of can track what's getting applied, what's called as
Hmm.
turn ended.
Yeah, you kind
Um,
of have to. You're subject to a lot of restrictions, but those restrictions help you like make the code more like modular and everything. And that's something that I like to do, which is like impose restrictions to make things more flexible. It's kind of weird because when you say restrictions, you don't think of flexibility, you think of like constraints that you can't like work around. But having restrictions makes things more consistent and more reliable because if something looks the same in the code, you know that it should perform decently. When you see something some code that's like drastically different, it kind of like shows that the code might be doing something that it shouldn't do.
it makes it pretty hard to track otherwise.
Yeah, you want like all the effects to have like similar ways of like working. So you can just if you understand one, you understand everything.
That's exactly in terms of this whole data piece. I've never seen this. Uh, hold on, let me go back to the status effect. I've not used this sort of um public kind of subdata like representation. Like I've never really thought of the scriptable object as a asset. Like I mean, it's been an asset, and I've created things based off a scriptable object as an asset. But like you could have different variations that are both the same asset. They just have different data in it. It has different data in it, and I think that's interesting to me. Um, let's see. I hope I don't. I might have just butchered the explanation, but it's okay. Uh, so with this sort of status effect, you pass in the state as well. You pass in the instance itself because right now the status effect is just a asset, and you kind of define what to do with each instance. Um, and the unit ID, this is it's similar where like we have a unit ID where you get the unit based off from the state using the ID. You don't just directly pass in the unit reference. So this is kind of like our indirect. This is like our little pointer.
Mhm, yeah,
Um,
our custom pointer.
Or custom pointer, yes. Just having units and stuff have IDs.
And
Uh,
it's also something that's really common, like web dev and everything. You kind of want your own IDs because like databases and everything, you can't really transfer pointers across computers. So IDs are more universal.
Good point. Like I've actually been suffering about that with my software engineering project. Just IDs. Uh,
Yeah, there's a lot of like there's a lot of like commonality between like web dev and game dev, and that's something I've been like just trying to like make everything consistent between the two worlds because game dev and web dev are kind of different things typically. Like you don't really think of like web dev and game dev, but like there's a lot of similarities. Like UIs are really similar to like web dev UIs. Like at Unity, you can think of the same principles there.
I think it's just something else I just kind of I thought of I think right now Gale doesn't have anything. I think which one has uh
Oh, by the way, Terry is talking in Discord.
on
That's
Discord? I
30 minutes
cannot hear
ago.
him in Discord. I cannot. Oh, awesome. Sweet. Oh, I think he's doing different Zoom meeting. Oops. Um, let me go get him. Cause I definitely want to see his. I definitely want to see his stuff. Hopefully that was insightful in some way. Oh, update Zoom to join call. We could. Do you want to guys switch over to Discord or because it's not gonna be recorded the same way, I guess. Oh, let's see. Oh, oh shoot! I didn't even see that. Dang it! No, no.
I should have checked because I didn't want to like move over to Discord.
Yeah, no. I'm so
I like
sorry.
checked Discord while I was like presenting.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Um,
I just saw the
I
notification. I was like,
definitely
oh,
want to. What's it called?
Does it say why he can't join the Zoom call?
He says he
Can't
can't update
update.
Zoom. Wait, there's an online Zoom though, right? Like there's a free Zoom, isn't
True,
there?
true. Yeah, you can like
Oh,
kind of join online. Don't exactly remember how to do that. I think it's like you click on the event, except that link is gone now.
Discord.
Oh, it literally just disappeared. Oof.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Literally the second you said we couldn't join the link.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I did. Well, I wanted him to. I wanted to. Oh damn. I'm so sorry. No. Oh
Well, to be fair, you're apologizing to a ghost currently because you're not
yeah.
in the
True.
call.
True. Guess we have to Discord. Would you guys be good with that? Uh,
Unless one of you has OBS, we can't record it.
yeah. And I don't know if I want to do editing. It's currently 3:15.
Well, I'm gonna have to go soon too, so I'm gonna need one of you guys to become the leader. I think, Andrew, you said you had to go too?
Yeah, I gotta split
Yeah.
once we hit time.
Well,
It's okay.
just past it, so.
Yeah, all right. Thanks for putting this on. It's been great. You should do another one at the end of fall semester
That is the
with
plan.
everyone who's been
Yeah,
in
this
place.
I love seeing all the
Alright.
different projects. Like last week was also pretty fun.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
A
Catch
couple
y'all
people had to
later.
drop out last second, so apologies for that. That's why we kind of went improv. Take care, Andrew.
Take care.
Do y'all want me to just end the recording then?
Uh, Perhaps. I think Justin left as well.
Oh yeah, he.
I'm gonna listen to him at least. And okay. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Brian, do you think it's gonna stick around, or there should be a browser version, right?
I've never heard of a browser version. I just
Of Zoom?
no, never heard of that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do right now. So I mean, I don't know if like the meeting's continuing or if
I
it's
could
ending.
get. So I'm gonna probably hop on the Discord DevLUp. I'm gonna open OBS.
Hmm.
Or maybe I could just record. Oh, hold up. We could just screen share what he's showing on Discord. Hold up. That is
Well,
like no,
like
but you
I
can't hear
have
him
to
though.
go.
Okay.
I have to go. So
Gotcha. I
are
think
you
you
using
cast
Zoom?
cast.
Because
I am using Zoom.
cool. So I will make you the leader then.
Okay. Yes, I might switch to Discord due to OBS. Brian, if you want to stick around. I know you're busy as well. I'd stick up the
Yeah,
whole time
I
for
do.
Terry.